Hello, my name is James Eaton, and I'm going to be the TA for your section of your Chemistry 2124 Organic Lab for this fabulous online session this semester. And this is just going to be a quick presentation on basic safety, risk, and organization practices used in a normal lab. We won't be doing, of course, anything in a lab this semester, so most of this is purely academic, but it's very important when you do get back in the lab, and more importantly for you in the specific time we're talking about here, you will be quizzed on this, so kind of pay attention to some of these things for me. All right, some basic overall goals for this presentation. We want to just basically improve the safety for any undergraduate organic chem labs. There's always issues with broken glassware, little tiny injuries. Luckily with students we haven't had any severe injuries, but we want to keep it that way. So we want to make sure you're aware of any possible problems that might occur during a lab, increase your knowledge about the use of the chemicals and reagents you're going to use during labs, and make sure you're able to keep a clean and well-organized lab environment, which hopefully will lead to no accidents or chemical contamination. Unfortunately, when you work in a lab, there's always going to be accidents. Even being as safe as you possibly going to be, something's going to happen. Generally, it's broken glassware and spilled contaminants, but as you can see on the picture on the left, sometimes you can just turn your eye for a second, not be washing something in a fume hood, and the reaction boils over, and then you got a big mess with hazards. Got to call environmental health and safety. So you always need to stay vigilant about the possibility for accidents during lab experiments. And generally with every lab, we'll let you know where there's problem areas you got to be specifically looking out for. Unfortunately, there's been tragic incidents in labs across the United States, both undergraduate and graduate, including deaths. Here at UTEP, there haven't been any deaths, luckily, but there have been some grad students that lost an eye. There's been several glass cuts and some chemical burns, but nothing that required hospitalization or anything other than the grad student who lost his eye. So we're working with some pretty bad stuff. Luckily for y'all, nothing at all this semester, but you always have to be aware of stuff and be very careful while you're working with it. So the most important thing is having some type of response plan if something does happen. So in the case of any serious accident, requiring hospitalization or serious injury, the very first thing we need to do is call the police. Campus police is usually quicker. It's 747-5611 while you're on campus, because they'll respond within 5-10 minutes, very, very quickly. If you call 911, they'll respond quickly, but they have to route it through campus police, so it might take a little bit longer. So it's always better just to dial campus police exactly. If it's not a life-threatening emergency or anything big, just like a chemical spill or something like that, you call environmental health and safety. They're on the ground floor of the CCSB. And then we also, no matter what happens, we have to call Dr. Mighty. He's the instructor of record for these classes. And if you can't reach him, you call the chemistry main office and they'll route through. But like I said, for this semester, you don't have to worry about any of this. This is just going to be for your information, and it might be on your quizzes and exams for this semester. All right, safety laboratory procedures and training are needed for everyone, not just you, but for the grad students, the TAs, such as myself, and the professors. We have to retake them every year. Ricardo McCreary is our point of contact with environmental health and safety, and he will provide several safety lectures every semester. For those of you that are going to go into lab sciences, you'll definitely be seeing him at some point, or at least someone from environmental health and safety. And every semester, and as a matter of fact, I suggest before every lab, not just because you're going to be quizzed on it, but it's always good to review laboratory safety sheets for all chemicals and any procedures you're doing, because it's very important that everyone stays safe and healthy, especially with things going on as they are now. Okay, let's talk about some mandatory safety rules for general and this organic chemistry lab. You must at all times have safety goggles while you're in a lab. And these have to be the wraparound approved safety goggles that cover the entire eye and seal the face. You can't use glasses or shot glasses or any shot goggles like that. They have to be approved chemical goggles. Also, you cannot bring any food or drink inside a lab. Of course, or not smoking, not even allowed on campus. In terms of apparel, you have to have closed-toed shoes and no cannabis shoes, because chemical spills can easily go right through those to your foot, and that's not good. You can only work in a lab when it is scheduled and permitted and there's a TA present. can't go in on your own, or when you're not allowed to. While you're in the lab, of course, you need to know the location of any fire extinguishers, safety equipment, and the nearest exits. Of course, that won't be any issue for this semester, but generally that's a very good thing to keep in mind. Also, anytime you're using glassware, check everything, make sure it's not cracked or broken. If it is, don't use it. You're going to be doing a lot of heating stuff in the lab, so those cracks can expand and everything can go everywhere. So always check before you use any glassware. Of course, it shouldn't need to be said, but never taste or smell any chemicals. If you do need to catch a smell of something for a specific reaction or something like that, you always hold the container away from your face in a fume hood and do a wafting motion with your hand to bring some of the smell near you, but never put your nose near a opening to a flask and smell it. That's bad. No one wants cancer. And of course, avoid contact with chemicals to skin. Most of the stuff we're going to use is either corrosive or at best skin irritant. So try not to get anything on you. You're going to be wearing gloves and a lab coat, so that's generally not a problem. Any chemicals waste or when you're done, they need to be disposed of correctly. It's going to be directed by your instructor, TA, and environmental health and safety. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then once you're done, your entire area has to be cleaned and wiped down. All equipment and glassware has to be cleaned and dried and put away back where you got it. Normally when you're in the lab, you're not allowed to leave until you check off with your TA and that's all done. So we make sure pretty well that you're keeping on track with that. There are multiple trash containers. Paper trash and normal non-chemical waste goes into standard garbage. There's a broken glass container and there's a chemical residue container for anything that has even suspect amounts of chemical residue. So those are all very specific, and you shouldn't just be throwing trash in random containers. They're all labeled very easily for you to see. And in terms of balance and prep rooms, they have to be kept clean at all times. Those are checked periodically by TAs. And again, that's one of the things that must be cleaned perfectly before anyone's allowed to leave for the day. Just to reiterate some safety measures and PPE issues for the lab, these are the important points. You are always at all times while in the lab to have approved goggles, gloves, and a lab coat on. Period. It's obligatory. It has to happen. In terms of PPE that you don't wear, every lab has eye wash stations at every sink, a safety shower at the door, and a fire extinguisher. Normally you would have a fire blanket too, but UTEP doesn't supply those, so those aren't included in our in-lab PPE. In terms of clothing, like I said, no open-toe shoes, no canvas shoes, no shorts. Your pants must go all the way down to your shoes, and no workout clothes, yoga pants, anything like those. Those are incredibly thin materials and very permeable to liquids, and we've had multiple times and issues with chemical burns just from a couple drops that seep through the clothing very quickly. The biggest thing is anytime you're using a chemical or a procedure, especially if you haven't done it before, the number one thing you need to do is if you're unsure, ask your TA. That's why we're here. We get paid. We get paid the big bucks to help y'all out. So any questions you'll have, ask. And for this semester, just email me or email Dr. Mighty, and we'll answer any questions you have for you. We'll try to help you out anything we can. Because like I said, this is a weird semester and no everything's online, so we're here to help you in any way we can. So just shoot us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So we're going to go over a quick couple of situations that normally occur in labs and how to remedy them. You'll probably see stuff like this on the quizzes, so please pay attention. Number one point of contention for every lab is always the glassware at the end of the lab. Students get lazy, they don't want to clean it. We don't want to clean it either. We know what it's like. But when you're done with your glassware, you clean it. You either put it on the drying rack. If there's no room on the drying racks, then you wipe it down with paper towels, put it dry, put it back into the storage units. All of the glassware you see around that sink, that's hazards. We don't know if it's clean. We don't know if it's dry. We don't know if someone just put it there. No idea. So that's something you got to watch out for. Here's another example of another sink, same situation. There's just stuff all over the way. And in this situation, the TA would not allow anyone to leave. So, everyone has to work, pull their weight, clean everything up. Okay, so for corrective measures here in terms of glassware, never leave, like I said, never leave anything around the sink. Everything needs to be dried on the drying racks or put away where it's supposed to be after you have dried it with paper towels and cleaned it, of course. Any type of clean glassware that's on the drying racks is expected to be both clean and ready to use for the next lab section. Generally, there's lab sections right after each other, Monday through Friday, every day. So when you're actually in the lab, that's a very important thing, and your TA is going to make sure it's done before anyone's allowed to leave. Everything needs to be organized, and like I said, these are health hazards, broken glass hazards, so just make sure all the glassware is clean and as it should be. Now, in terms of balances, this is another big area of contention for us. This right here is a picture of an unclean, spilled chemicals everywhere. It's a white powder. When you're working in organic labs, 99% of what you use is a white powder. You have no idea what that is. It could be a salt, it could be an acid, it could be a base, it could be something that with a drop of water will explode. So we can't have this. You can't leave it dirty after use. If you're weighing something out and you spill it, stop what you're doing, clean it up then, period. Fix the problem as it goes. Here's another problem. Chemicals open next to a scale in a scale hood, completely unattended. Can't have that. You can't have chemical sitting in little watch glasses or weighing dishes just sitting around. No one knows what they are. Even though that chemical container's there, that white powder at the bottom could be something else. You have no idea. So you never leave anything opened to the air. And if there's any containers near a scale, they must be closed at all time. If you're weighing something out, weigh it out, close the container, then let the next person use it. And of course, make sure it's clean and there's no spills. So like I said, corrective measures, this is how it should look. It should be all clean. There should be nothing around the fume hoods. There should be no chemicals around there by the end of the day. Everything should be nice and well kept before you're able to leave. Now, in terms of solvents and other type of wastes, you should be aware of three main types of waste. There's actually four, but we'll talk about three here. Three main types of waste are going to be your aqueous wastes, your halogenated waste, and your non-halogenated waste. Okay, so if you're unsure when you're ready to discard anything, you always ask your TA. You know, we'll laugh at you, we'll make fun of you, but you know, it's better for you to be safe and learn than to put something in there. Because if you put something, especially if you put a lot of organic things into an aqueous waste container, there's an explosion chance. There's a lot of gas that can be produced in vapor. It could be acidic. That's how one of our TAs lost their eye about 5 or so years back. So big problems, you got to make sure. So always ask if you're unsure. Now, in terms of what type of waste is what, aqueous waste is anything where the solvent is water. So any dissolved salts, any acid or base solutions, stuff like that, those are always going to be your aqueous wastes. Now, for halogenated and non-halogenated waste, those are always organic-based, organic solvents. So halogenated, as it sounds, is going to have an organic solvent that has a halogen in it. So we're talking about chlorine, bromine, iodine, acetylene, stuff like that. Anytime you're working with halogens, those have to be chemically processed and separated differently than all the other ones. So that's why we have its own waste. And they're a lot more reactive in presence of certain things. So we got to be more careful with them. Non-halogenated waste is just like it says, anything that's organic that doesn't have a halogen in it. So that's, of course, you're going to be your biggest, most used waste container for an organic lab. And again, as I said, if you have any questions at all, always ask the TA. Simple. Now, here we have a picture. We've got labeled containers. It says aqueous waste on it. It says DI water. You never want to have, DI water or any solvents near waste containers. And anything that is waste needs to have, like the container on the right side, the yellow tag that designated it's hazardous and it's waste and it's labeled. Also, you see a couple containers with some type of blue liquid and clear liquid. They're not labeled. No one knows what they are. Are they someone's reagent? Is it waste? Who knows? Can't have anything unlabeled in the waste area. So there's some issues there. Here's another picture of waste with a little beaker with a bunch of pipettes, little glass pipettes in them. You never reuse pipettes because you never know if they're clean. You never know what's going on with them. They're really hard to clean and they're incredibly cheap. So anytime you use a glass pipette for any specific thing, and as soon as you're done with it, you throw it in the broken glass container. We'll talk about that in a second. But never leave pipettes in a fume hood. Always dispose of them correctly. So correctively, this is what a waste container fume hood should look like. You've got everything perfectly labeled. You've got waste data logs, where that's what a TA is going to be doing. You don't need to worry about the waste data logs, but TA does it. But everything's nice, neat, and organized. That's how it should look at the end of the day. So, like I said, if there's any problems at all, the TA will help you with it. If something is full, You always call Ricardo McCreary at Environmental Health and Safety. He'll come and do a pickup. Generally, we don't have the students do that. The TA will take care of that, but you might be asked about it at some point who would pick up some waste, and it would be Environmental Health and Safety or Ricardo, one of the two. But this is how it should look. All right, and in terms of the pipettes, like I talked about earlier, on the top left picture, you see some glass pipettes in a beaker and little rubber bulbs. Those bulbs are what you use for the suction. Now, we keep the bulbs. Those can be reused, so don't throw those away. But the glass pipettes part, they go in that brown box that's on the right-hand side. It's labeled glass, it's got a picture, and it's specifically made for any broken glass. Any glass at all that is chipped, sharded, cracked, whatever, pipettes, etc. They go in that broken glass container, and only in that, nothing in the garbage, because different people take these things for chemical decontamination, recycling, and we don't want the normal, custodial staff to come up and pick a garbage bag full of broken glass. Got issues there, so that's how that works. So make sure everything is disposed in the correct container. Okay, normally at this point during a in-person meeting, we would give you a quick tour of the laboratory showing where all the facilities are, but of course, that's pretty impossible here since we're not allowed in the labs. But in terms of quizzes and what you might be asked later, just make sure when you go into any lab, you immediately find out where the safety showers are, the eyewash stations, the fire extinguishers, and any other safety protocol that is there. That's the most important thing. See where their exits are, see what's going on. In case of an accident, remember, know who you need to call, know who you need to talk to. We'll go over that again in a second. But in terms of the instruments in the lab and the safety, generally as undergraduates and non-chemistry majors, you won't be handling most of those on your own. You'll always be supervised. And the more dangerous ones, or in the reality of life, the more expensive ones, the TA will be doing it for you, and he'll let you press the buttons, but he'll be there with you at all times, so nothing gets screwed up. So instrumentation is a big deal, and those also need to be known about where they are, what to do with them. But you won't be doing very much with that this semester, other than just a quick, does our lab have a safety shower? Does our lab have eyewash stations? That type of question is all you're going to be getting. So again, the most important part is emergency response plans. And for y'all, when you're in the lab, it's knowing who to call, knowing what to do. And as a quick reminder, it's always the police if it's serious, campus police hopefully first. And if it's not serious, TA, and then environmental health and safety and Dr. Mighty. So I hope you all have a good semester, and I will see you again next week.